Today I'm joined by the Conservative MP for Uxbridge and South Ruislip, is that right, Steve?
Ruislip.
Steve Tuckwell, our latest MP, and the ex-leader of the Liberal Democrats, Vince Cable. Steve, straight into it. They said you would never become the MP. They said we couldn't win. We couldn't win in Uxbridge. It was going to go to Labour. What happened?
Well, firstly, Lee, welcome to Uxbridge and South Ruislip. It's great to have you here. In relation to my election victory, I was the underdog. I wasn't expected to win, but through hard work and through, literally hundreds of volunteers knocking on thousands of doors, we came through with an astonishing result at about 2:30 on that Friday morning.
But you had a little help on the way, Steve, didn't you? Somebody campaigned for you, gave you a good campaign plan.
Well, we had a number of campaign plans, but the primary message on the doorsteps that the good people of Uxbridge and South Ruislip were telling me and my volunteers is their complete and utter opposition to ULEZ expansion. So that was the message coming loud and clear. It was the residents of this great constituency that made it that by-election a referendum on ULEZ. There was other areas that we campaigned on as well, which was retaining our local police station, which is just down the road from here. Maintaining and building a brand new hospital, which my planning committee gave permission for. And it's now got government funding. And wrap that all around is I'm a local councillor here in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, and I've got the hyper-local connections. Looking forward to working with you, Steve. I'm going to move over to Vince next. So, Vince, it's great to have Steve in the House of Commons now. I'm looking forward to working with him. He led a great campaign, lots of local issues. But do you think that the ULEZ campaign actually helped Steve win the seat?
Well, I'm sure it did. But it's less of an issue in other places. I mean, I used to represent Twickenham. I mean, I've got a vested interest because my wife has an old banger. But in general, the attitude in the area is we've got very poor air quality in the town centres. There aren't too many old cars, so it's not stirred up feeling. But I was in Scotland last week, and there was real feeling about ULEZ in Glasgow because most of the low-income population are in perimeter schemes with poor public transport. The air quality isn't bad. So I think, it's one of these things that varies from place to place, and it needs to be properly designed to take the public with it.
So you think there's a clear dividing line between, for example, us, the Lib Dems and the Labour Party? I mean, the Labour Party seem to be rowing back a little bit on this at the moment. Well,
I'm not speaking for the Lib Dems, but I think that in general we support initiatives of these kind, providing they're properly run. Yeah. And you've got to take account of the fact that people have to plan their lives and phase out old vehicles. They need proper compensation through a scrappage scheme. They can't just be imposed very quickly and rapidly. But we're an outer London borough in Twickenham, and we don't have the same problems with it that you have here.
And you said your wife's got an old banger. I suppose there's two ways of looking at that, Vince, isn't there?
Yeah, well, we're a two-car household. I've got a reasonably modern hybrid, and it gets me around. But she's going to have to change.
So you're not an old banger. Steve, the £2,000 that Mayor Collins offering people, is that cutting any ice?
No, it's totally inadequate, and it's far too late. I mean, I've been speaking to residents since the by-election victory, and again, £2,000 would just not go anywhere near compensating people for ULEZ expansion. The message is absolutely clear. It doesn't need a scrappage scheme. Where it does, the mayor needs to be scrapped, not people's cars. And I think the issue here is that, here in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, and indeed other parts of outer London, we haven't got the same challenges that inner London have. We haven't got the transport links. Yeah. So ULEZ expansion will devastate business, and it will hammer families to the tune of £4,500 a year, and it needs to be stopped.
What about the voluntary sector in places like this? People do travel on a daily basis to volunteer at various places. They don't get paid, probably don't get any petrol money or diesel money or fuel money. Surely that's going to have an impact as well.
Indeed, carers is the number one sort of area that springs to mind when you mention that. People who are unpaid carers or low paid carers, it's going to hammer them. But also the youth provision in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. I was talking to Ruislip Rangers girls youth football team. The grassroots girls football team are looking to develop. They've been threatened with expulsion because of ULEZ expansion, where away teams from outside London won't come in.
OK, we're going to move on to a different subject now. This week we've got A-level results, lots of happy people going off to uni, some not so happy, Steve, Vince, but also I guess we've got two categories of young people. We've got the ones that's going to go on to apprenticeships, going to go to university, and then we see the other group of young people in the news this week that think it's a good idea to take as many paracetamols as possible to see how sick they can get and go into hospital. Vince, what's going on in society with
Well,
this?
I don't think there are two different groups of young people. I think we just accept that kids of that age have been really messed around in recent years, you know, with the pandemic. I mean, I've had, you know, grandchildren who've been through this and who are, you know, very upset by it. But in terms of the A-levels, the big controversy is about cracking down now on much higher standards and stopping grade inflation. Yep. And in principle, that's right, because the thing that really devalued the system was when you had teachers grading, and of course every teacher, or a lot of them anyway, wanted to give their kids A's and encourage them. But we've now got more objective standards that are much tougher, but it's meaning that there are more kids who fail.
Yeah. Steve, some children going on progressing, having good educational outcomes, going off to uni, doing apprenticeships, whatever. And I think there are two groups of young people in this country. There's other young people that's doing these silly things that, you know, sometimes I hear people say to me, well, there's not enough youth clubs, there's not enough sports clubs, there's not enough this and that, and government needs to invest more money in local facilities. But surely, at some stage, parents have to take some responsibility.
No, and I think it's a big team effort, and for all the students that are, you know, be getting their A-levels in the next sort of couple of days, wish them every success. You know, I've got children who have been to university, been through apprenticeships, and I think, you know, you have to get the right balance and let people, you know, choose for themselves. But there has to be the right parental support there as well. Yeah. You know, so for me, I think, you know, my favourite option forward is apprenticeships. I think there's a big place for more apprenticeships, earn as you learn as a principal, but at the same time, people that want to go into higher education, let's make sure they're supported as well.
And these young people that's doing this silly stuff, Steve, how do we get to these young people and nip it in the bud?
Well, I think, again, that there are plenty of opportunities out there. I mean, I've done some work with the police. You know, I went to a police event a couple of weeks ago. There was over 110 police cadets part of the event that I was at Brunel University. And I think, you know, that goes to show that there are opportunities there to sort of give people that you know, our young people that structure. Wealdstone Football Club is another example in the middle of this constituency that have over 400 people that they are coaching and training, and, you know, just giving them that structure so they can take into later life.
But they need good parents behind them to shove them into these places.
Indeed, they do. Yeah.
Yes. I guess, Vince, I want to come to you on, give you the last word on this. Social media, TikTok, we see these crazes where young people are doing silly things. You know, that leads to a lot of antisocial behaviour. It leads to people copying their peers. It leads to a lot of harm in some ways for young people.
Well, what this episode's told us is that TikTok have been brilliantly successful in mobilising young people. Yeah. I mean, the extraordinary power that they've got through social media. And clearly, if you're getting large-scale organised shoplifting, you know, the authorities have got to crack down on it and appropriate punishment. And that's obviously right. But shoplifting didn't start now. I mean, when I was a kid, a lot of my contemporaries were into it.
Bit of shoplifting in your long and distant past?
Well, I plead not guilty.
Not guilty.
But it wasn't unusual. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but the TikTok, the Facebook, the Instagram, it's all instant now, so people can look. It's quite fashionable. Even horrible things like young people harming themselves. It's out there, Steve, isn't it?
It is, and I think, you know, we need to be looking at ways in which we can give people that structure, and us as well as there's older people in society role modelling the right behaviours. I think is important as well.
Yeah, because I think I seen an article this week where so many thousands of young people in this country have been stalked online by perverts basically. They've been grooming them online, and it's quite disgusting. It's quite sad. And I hope that the online harms bill, you know, when that comes in, I know it's been a long time in the making, but that'll go a long way to protecting young people.